everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of UGA Sports Live. I'm your host, Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Dayne Young, our executive producer, and Jim Donnan, the former Georgia Bulldogs head coach, the member of the Collegiate Football Hall of Fame, and the number one reason everybody's tuned in on a Tuesday afternoon. They will all be tuned in later this afternoon to watch the announcement of Jackson Cantwell, the five-star offensive tackle. He's down to what looks to be Georgia, Miami, and Oregon. Nobody really knows where he's going. We know that he was in the process of making a video the other day, so we thought the decision was in, but it's a tough call right now. We're not sure what's going to happen. Last week, the Bulldogs landed their five-star quarterback of the future in Jared Curtis. Jared Curtis came to Athens this past weekend to try to convince Jackson Cantwell to become his left tackle and be his guy, and that didn't quite work out. So, we don't know if that worked or not. We saw his mom was out there trying to recruit him to come to Georgia as well, Jared Curtis's mother. So everybody's up in the air about what's going to happen with Jackson Cantwell, and we're going to get a coach's take on it here in a second. It's a big deal. If Georgia gets him, then they'll land the number one offensive tackle, the number one quarterback. They want the number one tight end and Mark Bowman. They're going after Tyler Atkinson, another number one player in the nation. It's a big recruiting week for Georgia. And then this weekend, they have the scavenger hunt, one of their premier recruiting events of the Georgia calendar. And, Coach, it's going crazy right now in the recruiting circle. So just want to get your thoughts on Jackson Cantwell and where Georgia is in recruiting right now.
Yeah, I'm going to give you two words. Drew Rosenhaus.
Okay, well, that was great.
The reason I say that is we've talked on our program here extensively about the evolution of agents and the representation that they give these young kids. To this date, I haven't read, and I don't keep up with it like you guys, but I haven't heard about the so-called Jimmy Sextons, Drew Rosenhaus, repping any of these guys. You know, it's more some of these newer people, or maybe a lesser guy in the CAA, or you know, you don't hear about Drew Rosenhaus repping anybody. But let me just say, this guy is running the ship here, and when he's there, you know, he really. If you look back at his MO over the last 20, 25 years, he's a wheeler dealer now. And he's probably looking at a couple things. If I'm him, you know, long-term representation of this kid, maybe getting him in when he gets drafted 3 or 4 years from now. Also, where he can get developed the best, which might mean him taking less money. So you got to look at all that. But my feeling is when you feel pretty good about a kid and you got good, you know, vibes from him and knowing what he's going to do, and you feel like you're going to get him when you really don't know a whole lot, which I haven't read that anybody knows a lot, then I would say that I can't go into this afternoon as confident as I was on the other guy, you know, on getting the quarterback. So, and I don't have any contact. I try to stay out of that because I know I didn't like all these people asking me when I was recruiting people, but I know it's your job and it's our job to get you. But I do think that the people out there need to know that this kid having Drew Rosenhaus rep him is a big deal. I'm not talking about minimal. It's a big deal.
And you know where Drew Rosenhaus got his undergraduate degree?
Yeah, Miami. But
oh well. So we'll have a story after the announcement about where Georgia looks next as offensive tackles, and that's.
No, I don't think necessarily that's the answer, but you know we'll see.
No, but that's a good point, because here's the thing: Jackson Cantwell was supposed to make his announcement earlier, and he moved it back. He postponed it a week or two, and then decided to add a last-minute visit to Georgia. He came in this past weekend. Jared Curtis came down. the plan was him to move his recruitment back, visit Georgia, pick Georgia. Everyone throughout, all the experts, if you will, all the people who follow recruiting had him pegged as going to Georgia. Georgia's the leader in the clubhouse. It's Georgia's to lose. Yesterday, all this talk about Miami popped up. Oregon went to his house to visit him. I'm with you, Coach. Whenever you have a great feeling about a kid, he usually comes to the University of Georgia. Go back to Justice Terry. Everything looked like he was coming to Georgia. Everyone expected him to come to Georgia. Last second, get the butterflies in the stomach. It didn't happen. Not going to say the butterflies always indicate something, but there hasn't been any reassurances from sources anywhere saying, hey, it's definitely Georgia bound. And so when you don't get those reassurances, as I told people in the vault last night, prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, when you look at the fact that this guy's rated not only number one tackle, but number one player in the country, you got to feel like people are going to open up the vaults. I mean, it's just, and I'm sure we'll be very competitive, but in the end result, you got to have your whole team too, and you got to recruit accordingly and allocate your resources. So I just think that if I hadn't known that he was his agent and reading everything that I've read and talking to some people, I felt good about him going into last week. I actually felt better about him than I did the quarterback at that point, but he's I didn't realize his parents were Olympians and had all that background and, being national figures. So when I think of some kid from Missouri, I think about all those kids. I used to go out in the farmlands of Missouri and get lost trying to find them. I couldn't figure out where they were, but he's definitely a big stud, and hopefully we'll get him. And I think everybody just needs to not listen to anything we say and just figure out what's going to happen. But I thought that. Did you know that he was his agent?
Yeah, Dash posted that on the board the other day, and once I saw that, it's kind of I've only heard the stereotype of what a powerhouse, for lack of a better word, Rosenhaus is, and I'm just like, I don't know his MO when it comes to college football players, and I think that's the one thing a lot of us are trying to get used to see this happen at the professional football, baseball, basketball, the trade talks, and everybody expects a guy's going to the Philadelphia Eagles, and all of a sudden he's a Buffalo Bill, and you're like, where the hell did this come from? And we just take it in stride that there were last minute machinations by the agent and the administration, the people, the owners, the GMs, for these last minute things to happen. And we just kind of shake our head, and if it's a conference foe, we're upset. If it's our team, we're upset. If it's somebody else, then we don't care that big a deal. Now we're seeing that, and it doesn't happen with every kid. A lot of people are tuning out on recruiting, saying, I just don't want to follow it anymore because you don't know what's going to happen. Well, that didn't happen with Jared Curtis. It might happen with this kid. You just don't know. So the Uber agents, the power agents getting into the game, that might help us get a little, I don't want to say stability, but might help us be able to predict it more, because a lot of these kids, when the agent is their uncle, their dad's friend from work or something like that, these non-professional agents, you get a lot more kind of hit or miss going on there. So there's a good side and a bad side to the Jimmy Sextons and the Rosenhauses of the world coming into the market, because at least you get an idea of how they operate.
Well, what happens is if I'm the parent and I've got a guy like him, not only can he negotiate with the team, but he has such easy access to national brands. Just go to Gatorade or go to whoever it might be and say, look, I got this number one guy, and he's going to be somebody you need to focus on next year. And if you look at collegiate athletes, and they start throwing out the heavy money now. I mean, when all of a sudden, when you saw some of those basketball things last year that had those women and men basketball players on it. I mean, it's just different world, and I'm excited to see what happens this week. But I know that we're doing well, consistently doing well across the board. So,
Speaking of, let me ask you about last week. They picked up Jared Curtis, 5-star quarterback, ridiculously talented guy. There are a lot of 5-star quarterbacks out there over the years. There are a lot of 5-star offensive tackles over the years. Which one is more important to land?
well, you can look at it a lot of different ways. You always want to build your team, with the O and D line, but you got to have that trigger man. I mean, if it got down to, which one would you, if you want to build a franchise professionally, college, anywhere, you build it around your quarterback. That's what everybody's trying to do in the pros. And I would say the 5-star quarterback first.
The reason I was asking, and Dayne can attest to this, you pointed out to me years ago how hard it is to find a 6'7", 6'8" guy, 330 pounds who can move his feet. That's a rare human being. An elite quarterback is also a rare human being, but maybe not quite as elite. But I think there's more maybe between the years with the quarterbacks than there is, between the shoulder blades.
But I will say this, and not being anything but straight up, an elite 5-star with a machine gun arm is even more that you just don't. We talked about it last week. You just don't find guys with arms like this kid has. I mean, he's got it. So special arm.
Roddy, I want to touch on something you just said about, because I've heard the same thing of some fans being fatigued with recruiting and how it's changed and do they want to follow it. If you look at the NFL draft, the majority of Georgia players that get drafted highly are ones that Georgia got to the program in recruiting. It hasn't been guys that they pulled in the transfer portal. It hasn't been guys that came to Georgia and then transferred somewhere else. The majority of them come to Georgia, hang out for 3 years, sometimes 4 years, and get drafted pretty high. So if you care about Georgia, you have to care about recruiting. That's the pipeline.
Yeah, one of the Georgia coaches is basically, he said it off the record, but he mentioned he doesn't bring in a lot of transfer talent at his position because it's too hard for them to have learned it somewhere else. He says by the time they get here, they'll be so far behind the ball that I got to get them out of high school. Even if they could go somewhere else and play a couple years and then come to Georgia, they'd be so far behind in learning our offense or our defense that even though they're talented, they wouldn't be as good as a kid who came to Georgia and sat a year or two and learned how to play. And to your point, Dayne, that's people say, well, I'm just going to follow the transfer portal. If you're relying on the transfer portal to build your team, you're out of luck. So recruiting matters. This weekend, the number of talented guys, and we have 2 different lists. If you go check out the front page of UGASports.com, we have kind of the blue chipper list, and then we have the comprehensive list of all the guys that are going to be here for this scavenger hunt weekend. The kids love the scavenger hunt. They get teamed up with a coach. They run all over the stadium. All over the campus. They learn things. They really get deep into what the campus looks like. They're going to have an absolute blast. Out of the scavenger hunt, we see kids committing. And it would not shock me to see Jared Curtis make a second trip in 2 weeks to come down and talk to some of these guys. Coach, did you ever have a scavenger hunt?
Not at Georgia, but, I've been involved with them before. But having gone over to it, it really is a good interaction to see all of a sudden a coach has been talking to you, and then he's sitting right beside you or standing beside you, shooting a water gun at somebody, or seeing Kirby Smart slide across a slip and slide. That just blew my mind. When they put that slip and slide down and Kirby went blasting across it and slid about 50 yards on that. I don't know a lot of coaches who would do that.
There's a kind of famous story of, the coaches are assigned a few players and they have to go all over campus to find stuff, and they will sabotage each other. They get ultra competitive. And I remember I think it might have been Todd Hartley and Glenn Schumann. They have a little golf cart that they are a little side by side. They run around on campus on. And one of them stole the other's keys to be sure that he could advance to the next thing. And I'm like, that's low down, but that's
cold blooded, man. Cold blooded.
So just the point being, it's a huge event.
I mean, I never will forget. I'm standing between Darnell Washington and Amarius Mims in line to get some food there. And then they're getting ready to have this pie eating contest. And I asked them if they're going to get involved in it. And they said, no, we're just going to eat as much of this food as we can.
Coach, what was your on-campus visit, official visit recruiting tactic? What was your favorite thing to do when someone would come to campus and you were a coach?
I think there's a lot of different things you could point out, but the number one feeling for me is, regardless of how many recruits we had, to make every one of them feel like he was the only one here, that this was it. This was the time of his life, the biggest decision that he was going to ever make to that point in the 17 or 18-year-old, and do everything I could to make him feel like he knew about me, our coaches, our players, and be completely candid. I mean, we want to lay out the dog and everything, but don't, make it where it's, it's not like this when you're here. So make it as complete as we could. I know some coaches put plants around campus and they do the bus tour, and there'll be an athlete at the library that is acting like he's studying, or, whatever it might be. But, we never did stuff like that.
I would. Do you? The Georgia girls were a thing when you were coaching here, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were already here. Coach Goff and Coach Greer had set that up, and these girls were invaluable. I mean, still occasionally catch up with them sometimes when they're in town. You'll see them at a game or something, but they were excellent at taking care, because when you think about not necessarily this trip they're getting ready to do this weekend, but it's like a game. There's 200 or 300 people here, and there's no way that the recruiting staff and the coaches and all can take care of all those people. You got to have some auxiliary help, whether it's the Georgia girls or student help or whatever it might be, that need to make sure they get from place to place and or get their seats at the game or whatever it might be. But I always told my people that, you got to remember that kid's going to Virginia to make a trip to Tennessee, to Florida. And if he comes in here and he gives your name at registration, and then you ask him, where's he from? That's pretty bad. Instead of saying, hey, Dayne, hey, glad to have you in here. How'd you do last night against Moultrie? Or not even that, just say, saw where he scored 2 touchdowns against Moultrie last night. Really fired up to have you here. Whatever it might be, but make them know that you know who they are.
I've actually seen I'll call it a cheat sheet for a better term, but it's basically a list of who Georgia has coming in that weekend, and it has all the information about that. It's like, who did he play last night? How did he do? Stuff like that. Or injured, knee issue, foot issue, ankle sprain. And you can ask him, how's that ankle healing? And kids are like, wow, they are tuned into me. And the reason I was thinking about the Georgia girls was talk about, on a big weekend, having so many people, like you said, a game weekend, 200-300 kids, because we take photo galleries of the kids walking in, and it is, like you said, you got 300 kids there. It's tough to make each kid feel like he's the only one there. But when you have an assigned host, which, they do on the officials, and Kirkland and those folks, they do a great job walking these kids around and, making them feel special. Kind of miss that, each kid, because we did talk to them after the game or after the event, and they're like, yeah, my host, she was fantastic. And now it's usually a player, and they talk to the players. So it's going to be a big weekend. I'm excited about it.
It's different when Dayne's question on official visit, you might have 10 or 15, but, like this one here, there'll be some juniors coming to this that aren't on official visits. I just want to. Kirby wants them to see the atmosphere around these other guys, and it gets them started. They really are pretty selective in who they bring in for this because, it's hard to have a scavenger hunt for 500 or 600 people.
Dayne, I was going to
just-
bring up that. Go ahead.
Well, I just saw a list. I think this was announced within the last hour. Football players in the state of Georgia named to the High School Sports Hall of Fame. Kirby Smart is one of them. He's one of 9 former Georgia players joining the Georgia High School Sports Hall of Fame. Isaiah Crowell, Kirby Smart, Robert Edwards, Harris Barton, Knox Culpepper, Freddie Gilbert, Lindsey Scott, Paul Gilbert, Tom Nash from 1922.
Tom got in there the year before Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs.
Love it. Hey, shout out to Crowell. Good job, Isaiah.
Yeah, maybe he can take his bulldog to it. Hey, congratulations to Kirby. I don't think he gets near enough credit for his playing ability, because he did do some really good things as a player here. But of course, his coaching career has just been unbelievable.
I mean, look at the number of interceptions the guy had. That's not a fluke. You can't do that if you don't know what you're doing. I did want to mention the tweet by, and I'll move on from the whole Jackson Cantwell story with this last one. Brent Rollins noted that since 2014, 48%, 48% of the 5-star tackles have been drafted in either the first round and only 2 of them have transferred. So to your point, Dayne, about guys coming in and sticking with the program, but a lot of the big men don't transfer as much. And if you have a 50% success rate of saying, hey, this guy is a first-round draft pick and him being drafted in the first round, that's freakish. I mean, there are 3 million high school kids, and you can point to them and say, hey, here are our 6 5-star offensive tackles in this class. And knowing that 3 of those
48% of the whole country or just in Georgia?
No, that was the country.
Nationwide, yeah.
Wow.
Well, if you get a top-end tackle like that, it really can be transformative. I think of Andrew Thomas. Georgia doesn't do what it does in 2017 if Andrew Thomas doesn't step in and play right tackle early and play it at a very high level. And I think he's one of the best players to ever come through Georgia.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, look at having Broderick Jones and Marius Mims, what they did for you. That's Jamari Sawyer, things he did. Just Isaiah Wilson. So I'm with you. Just want to point out that the numbers there. So if you can land one, great. If not, they're going to have I'm going to go try to see that kid Malachi Lee out in Hawaii.
That'd be a good trip for you. You need to go cover that.
Maybe get him to announce his. I think that's a Georgia-Michigan battle. So there's definitely a possibility there. Give me a Hawaiian offensive lineman. I love that.
So we'll take a break.
Yeah, let's a quick break here, and I want to mention our friends at Athens Ford. They've got a good deal going on with all of their the employee pricing that's going on right now. But they are also, if you on their mailing list, they put out a thing right now saying that you could get up to $17,000 off MSRP on selected vehicles. And I clicked on it. It's $17,000 off the 2024 Ford Expedition, all models. So they still have some 2024s out there, and they're trying to get them off the lots. $17,000 off a Ford Expedition. If you want the 2024 Ford Ranger, which is a fantastic truck, I love the Ford Rangers, $10,000 off on those. 2024 Ford F-150s. Some of those are starting as low as $29,999. So the XL standard cab Ford F-150, America's best-selling truck, as low as $30,000 and 3.9% APR financing for 72 months for qualified buyers. And if you want to get the XLT or the STX, little different packages there, get up to $15,000 off of those vehicles when you get a chance. So don't miss out on the Ford sales event that they have going on right now. Also, I want to mention our friends at My Perfect Franchise. That's Andy Ludecki. He is the czar, if you will, of getting your own franchise. This is a guy who knows it backwards and forwards. He's done it for tons and tons of people. A lot of them are members of UGASports.com. So these are folks who, were just happened to be reading the board. They saw his, guess the franchise contest or heard us talking about him. They reached out to Andy Ludecki and they started a new business. A couple new roofers out there. So when the storms come through and you need a new roof, you might be calling someone who started a franchise in the last 3 or 4 years and got started through Andy Ludecki. So reach out to myperfectfranchise.net. You don't have to do it if you want to be a roofer, but there are 3,000 other franchise opportunities that he can clue you in on. So check him out when you get a chance.
So there's some questions from UGAsports.com for Coach Donnan. This is from Hunting Dog. The dog vent was reminiscing about the 1997 come-from-behind victory in Bobby Dodd Stadium. That was with Mike Bobo to Corey Allen. What do you remember about that last-second victory?
Yeah, I'm just glad it happened. But basically, Tech scored with like less than a minute to go, and I got everybody on the sideline and said, look, we just got to get into our 1 minute stuff and make sure you play with poise and don't get any penalties, and we're going to get the ball to Champ. Well, first play, we threw a little screen to Champ, and he busted it, and then we hit Robert Edwards out of the backfield on a little flare control. But the thing I remember most, and most people on this podcast listen daily to our ones, but in case you missed it, this is what I remember most about it. Earlier in the game, we ran a play on the goal line, and the headline the field judge down there was Rocky Good, and he ended up being a referee later on, and he's passed away. Rest in peace, Rocky. But he called it was Thad Parker, and we threw a fade stop in the goal line, and he said he was out of bounds. So I went running down there to the 20-yard line as far as I could go, and I said, Rocky, I'm not going to embarrass you in front of everybody here, but I guarantee you, if we get another call in this game, you better get it for us. You better get it. That's what I said. Well, after that pass to Robert, we threw a pass over the middle, and a kid from Tech was holding on to Hines Ward's jersey coming across the middle, and they intercepted it. Game's over. Here comes Rocky dropping that flag, baby. Which it was a right call. He had to call it, but I think we laid the groundwork there to make sure that he was on top of it. Then the next play, we ran flex right 180, flex right, slide left 180, fan wide, and hit it and the reason we call 180, one is a hitch route, but you can convert it to a fade versus press coverage. Well, Corey had press, and Mike looked off the safety a little bit and just threw the ball into the boundary, and great catch by Corey and good throw. So Corey doesn't get enough credit for some of the things he's done in Georgia football annals. That catch he made against Auburn to get us in overtime, and then that play was tremendous. And then against Florida, he caught the post when the game was kind of up for grabs that year. He got a really deep post that really helped us. But excellent receiver.
This question from Kirsten on the dog vent. If Georgia stays healthy, it is a positive future potential of the trenches on both sides. Biggest concern, though, is it offensive line or defensive line? Which of those do you think Georgia should be more concerned about right now?
Well, I'm going to do like that meteorologist when they ask him if it's going to rain. He said, well, there's a 50% chance. So I'm just going to say both of them have strengths and both of them have weaknesses. I think the competition against each other will help. We certainly got youth on the side of both of them, and how some of them develop and how quickly will it be enhancement of our whole, team. So I think the supporting cast of the secondary and linebackers will really help our D-line in the fact that these are more experienced players, even though some of the safeties aren't. And then on offense, the tight end and receiver group are going to be good, running backs. And, our quarterback's got a good knowledge of systems. So front line depth is going to be the real issue for me on the O-line.
Straddling the fence. I'll say defensive line. I'll say I'm a bit more concerned with it.
Well, you could say that. I got concern on both of them, really, but I was trying to kind of sugarcoat it.
You did a good job. DVD Dog, which quarterback would you take to win one game, all the marbles on the line? Jamel Holloway or Michael Payton?
Well, both of them won national championships for me, and both of them were clutch. But I'd have to go with Jamel just because of the quality of competition. It's not anything against Michael. But, Jamel did it down after down until he hurt his knee. He was incredible. And, it's kind of like they knew we were going to run the ball. They knew that he was going to probably have it, but he always made it happen. So incredible. They couldn't remember the snap count, but he was great on everything else. And you remember the story I've told you about the snap count, right?
I'd love to hear it again.
Well, we used to say set, blue 14, hike, or something like that. And Jamel could never remember what it was on, so he would say, different things. So after we started playing him, we changed it to the word go. So if it's on the first sound, it was go. If it's on the color, it was set. Instead of saying blue, it'd be set, go. And then if it's on the number, we would say set, blue 14. We would say set, blue, go. Then if it's on 1, it'd be set, blue 14, go. So our line knew anytime Jamel said go, they just went. So he was sometimes it'd be on 1 and he'd say go. Sometimes it'd be on the first sound, and he would keep going and say set, blue 14, and act like it's on 1. But he couldn't remember the damn snap count.
Coach, it seems like more quarterbacks now, because I watched some of the NFL draft coverage, and John Gruden was one that makes them do the snap counts. And a lot of them are saying that all they do is clap now. They don't even call out anything in college.
Yeah, well, they got the clap and they got the heel. They raise the heel and do all that. But I always took my quarterbacks to over to the music department and helped them take voice lessons on how to use their diaphragm on their to get more, a more pronounced, like instead of just saying set, you'd say set, from way down deep. And some of these high pitched voices really got a lot better at it because, we didn't use the heel and stuff like that until like the late 90s. So you had to do some of these big games on the road. It's hard to get the snap count. And we even came up with a deal where we'd hold our hands up and say alert, alert. And whichever side he went to first, maybe in the first half or second in the second half, let the backs in the backfield know which side he was going to.
I never would have thought of that. Right. That's brilliant.
There was a documentary last year that Greg Maddux never used the signs from the catcher, that he would call his own pitches by how he caught the ball back from the catcher. So if he caught it up high, if he touched his nose, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you've never seen anything like sign stealing up there. Yeah, I went out to that softball tournament last week, and I was impressed with that. Signaling now they got the catcher and the pitcher can get the snap, what the sign is right to a little watch on their arm. And sure is good because they can really eliminate all that stuff back and forth between the coach and the catcher and everything.
It's like the quarterbacks can get microphones in their helmet. It seems like you should be able to have a microphone in the pitcher.
Yeah. Somebody said they were doing the microphone in the catcher. I don't know for baseball. I don't know if they are or not, but
I just say let the pitcher and the catcher talk to each other. I like that idea. I
want to say this one shout out tremendous job by the Georgia event staff and the softball program hosting the SEC championship last week. Things like that just don't happen, especially when you got some rain and all the inclement weather and the staff on the field working hard. And, Robin from the ops department and the softball just did a tremendous job. And of course, Tony, I feel good about the future with him at the helm. I mean, this is kind of a down year for Georgia. They're going to Duke to play in the playoffs, but just amazing talent level. I mean, like 14 teams from the SEC going to the NCAAs in softball.
All 4 number 1 seeds, 6 of the top 8 are all from the SEC. It is a brutal conference. You could be great in this conference, and that doesn't mean crap because all the other teams are elite. So it's rough. Speaking of the SEC, Coach, there's a lot of talk the past few weeks about the SEC actually moving to a 9-game schedule. Kind of want to get your thoughts on that. I'm against it. I'm just flat out tell people I'm against it. I don't like it, but a lot of folks are saying that it is inevitable.
Well, but with 16 teams, how are you going to get everybody playing each other? But the one thing that you're going to lose if you go to that 9, you're not going to see many teams playing any intersectional games against really good teams. So the fans are going to be deprived of that. But from the coach's perspective, if you're going to play 9 games, like that one year we played 10 SEC games, during COVID, you just get beat to a pulp against all these teams. So it's certainly something that's going to be back and forth. But, I'm more for playing 8 just because from a coach's perspective, hard to beat all these teams in the SEC, and you got to get to the playoffs. So that's a good way to do it.
I guess for me, it's like you said, getting beat up. I don't know that the advantage of working through the conference schedule, getting more, one extra team a year so that you can say, hey, we've played everybody in the SEC is worth the hassles of losing, your out of conference games, the interesting ones. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch, Ohio State and Texas play. Georgia's played a lot of out of conference games. Giving those up, I just don't like it. And plus, you say just the wear and tear on the athletes when you've got so many more games. Just not a big fan of going to that. So,
old Socrates, Coach Rule up at Nebraska, he's gone out and said that no way they were going to play a tough non-conference schedule because of all the teams they're playing in the Big Ten. So, I mean, he's got his reason. I can understand.
Well, I mean, if you told me that Georgia had to play 9 conference games, I'd be like, those other 3 better be, high school teams.
Yeah. The thing that people really need to take into account is if you go 9, then you're going to have 4 and 5 as far as away and home every other year. Of course, we have that neutral site game. But the travel involved takes it out of you as much sometimes as just the actual, hitting up on each other all the game and everything. So you play a game over at LSU at night and got to come home late and all that. It's tough on them, and you got to be able to get ready for the next week. So, but football as we know it, ever changing with the portal and the everything involved is not to mention NIL, everything. It's always an ever changing deal.
And the dog father says can't close Pandora's box once it's been opened, especially that box is filled with money.
Yeah.
They're going to add games. They'll find all the crazy ways to add games. There's going to be play-ins at the end of you'll have 3 and 4 in the SEC or 4 and 5 trying to play their way into the playoff. All that will be happening.
We've talked multiple times about how this is the golden age of Georgia football, but it is also a changing age. And I really think that in typical Georgia's luck, when things are going good for Georgia, something outside comes up. So I think that Kirby Smart was primed the way he was stacking talents before the transfer portal hit. He would have had an unreal run, but then you get the transfer portal, crazy NIL numbers, and the schedules just become.
Let's add in Texas.
Yeah.
And Oklahoma, but Oklahoma right now is not the threat, but the threat of Texas to the rest of the teams. I mean, end up in the playoffs last year and preseason up there 1 or 2 this year. I mean, that's tough.
Yeah, it's again, and if nothing had changed, I'd give Kirby Smart 4 or 5 more titles. I just believe he could do it. But now it's going to be tougher for him. And he pointed out last year, he said, look, it's not we won the SEC for the first time with 16 teams in it. We didn't play for national title, which is what everybody wanted, but that was the best coaching job we've ever done. And I agree with him. It's going to be tough. And each year presents new challenges, but I'll always say, stick with Kirby because everybody's got those same challenges and he's going to be the one. There's also coaches, a lot of people talking about Clemson having a revival, and you and I passed by that school not too long ago, and a lot of people are kind of penciling.
Yeah,
Clemson.
I was really surprised that you had your window down and a diploma blew in there. But
you put it on the wall behind me.
All right, go ahead.
I know a lot of people that's the new insider darling, Clemson. I'm going to get your thoughts on them because they got a lot coming back this year, and Georgia doesn't have to play them.
Well, first of all, I'll defer to Dayne because he knows a little more about Clemson's roster. But you were saying that they have 4 first-round draft choices today?
Yeah, when you look at projected first-round picks, it's probably about 4 guys from Clemson.
Wow.
For next year.
I guess that's why they are the new favorite, if you will.
Cade Klubnik, a couple defensive linemen, cornerback, Terrell's younger brother with the Falcons.
Yeah, so that in itself shows you that their talent level's there, and they did come from behind and get in the playoff last year with that ACC championship. And, I think it's just a case of Dabo wanting to solidify his philosophy of saying, hey, we're going to live the Clemson way and not believe in the portal and all that. So it worked out okay. But long range, I don't know if you can hang in there like that, but we'll have to see. But certainly it's a Clemson team that was a lot better last year than it has been, although they did lose to South Carolina at home. And they've lost to South Carolina at Death Valley the last 2 times they played, and that's kind of incredible.
I think the team that a lot of people are, I don't say sleeping on, but teams may have written off too early is actually Auburn. I'm a big Jackson Arnold guy. I think he's the hell of a QB, and I'm thinking that guy there. Maybe Auburn's not as
Auburn needs to do it this year. I mean, you got to show something because didn't go to a bowl last year and really digressed from the first year, and be interesting to see. Coach Freeze has a really good offensive concept, but he has a tendency to quarterback wise. Sometimes those guys react to him different ways, so we'll see how it works.
This question from Billy Zane. Based on what you know, how do you expect teams to try and defend Georgia's offense going into the season?
Well, I want to give a shout out to Billy because I always like his questions, but I saw his son this weekend. I was coming out of a local restaurant, and he came up and very nicely introduced himself to me and said he was Billy's son. And, he's been a great supporter of Georgia and our program forever, and it's nice for his son to come up and say hello to me. So anytime anybody's out like that anymore, if you see me, I always enjoy talking to you because I got nothing else to do. But in this case, my daughter and I were going out, just finishing a good dinner. But getting back off that, I would say that go over the question again. I'm giving Billy some love, and I'm trying to remember exactly what was it.
How do you think defenses will try to defend Georgia's offense next season?
Well, I think it's going to be prove that you can do these things. We're not going to defend the ghost plays. If you can't consistently make the plays that attack a certain defense, then they're going to run that. So I would say early on they're going to gang up to stop the run and make us prove we can throw and catch the ball.
Newer quarterback. I know Gunner played a little bit, but I agree. See what he can do down the field. You test that first.
You can't block us. We're going to get in your backfield and take you apart. So
You
right.
mentioned eating out, Coach. Hydrant Chaser, what's the best breakfast place in Athens post Mayflower, since it is no longer active in Athens?
Well, we got a lot of different ones up here. Jay Christopher's is really good. But for my money, Chick-fil-A, just because of the variety and because of the staff in there and the people that come in there that I get a chance to talk to. So it's kind of my favorite place to go. But, I'm sure you got some others that are good. The only problem, I go into Cracker Barrel, I freeze my ass off in there. I like to eat in there, but it's too cold.
It's 17 degrees in there year round. I can't take it. I also like Mama's Boy, and that's pretty good. But Jay Christopher.
Oh, yeah, you got to get in there. I mean, if you can, I'm not one of these guys like to wait in line too much, but Mama's Boy really good too.
One time, Coach, I took you to Farm Cart on Baxter Street because it's a bit of a hidden gem, and
it's good. It's good, kind of a local treasure there as far as good stuff. But hard to beat a good breakfast unless it's a good lunch or dinner.
Big City Bread is the other. I give a shout out. Big City Bread's fantastic. Yes. This is from Port Charlotte Dog. Who do you think will emerge at offensive tackle outside of Freeling and Green that can contribute and plug in and be a part of that rotation?
Somebody's going to have to, but Bo Hughley. I mean, some of these young guys. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to watch them in the fall, but certainly we're lucky to have those two coming back with experience.
Bo Hughley is something. I know they got Mason Short recently, but
yeah,
I can just see him moving inside. So,
yeah, he good player.
Maybe Jamal Merriweather moves out, Coach.
He showed some flashes last year. I hope he can be consistent, but he's got some ability.
Questions like this kind of remind you of the value of having people like Xavier Truss on your team, where you can plug him into so many different roles there.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't have that much on the offensive line. I mean, they have some experience. I think you feel good about Truss, about Freeling and Green, Micah Morris, Drew Bobo. But in terms of just looking at second team when injuries start to happen, a lot of unproven at offensive line.
Do you think that Jazeer Jackson could ever make it? I mean, he's 6'10", he's a giant, but he didn't play high school football at all. We saw him on special teams last year, but
he's in there to block kicks and everything because of his height, but still it's a big adjustment and long range. I hope he can make it. Right now he's still got some ways to go.
Yeah. This whole conversation, I think it's why the Jackson Cantwell buzz is what it is, because if you get offensive line recruiting right, it does make everything else so much easier. And we can all point to classes at Georgia that haven't panned out in offensive line, and 2-3 years down the line, you really feel it.
Yeah, you got to – the thing we got, which Kirby mentioned several times in his press conferences, we got a lot of depth there as far as numbers to give you something to pull from and also give your defense a chance to practice against. So some of these guys are going to hit, though. I think just the fact that competition they go against daily, the fact that we offer them and that they're here, I think we're going to get some guys developed.
Yeah, come on, Daniel Calhoun. Let's see it.
Well, I guarantee you that guy makes my mouth water, Daniel Calhoun, but he's a guard. But
I know. He
can play tackle, but Daniel Calhoun, he's going to be really good. He already is.
That's all the questions from UGASports.com, but I'll give you one comment, Coach. James Caraway said, Coach Donnan must have had the best singing quarterback rooms in the country, taking him over to the music department.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that they got any culture from as far as any kind of stuff. I know Jamel's all in that rap stuff, but he always brought this big jam box it was bigger than him on a bus and carried on there and had the music. And Switzer didn't care. I mean, you talk about people going to a game. It looked like we're going to a party or something. I mean, people didn't have any game face on. They're playing that rap music in the back and everything. It's just totally different than most places when, everybody's quiet as a lamb. Nobody's saying anything. You just tight as a tick driving over to the stadium, but Jamel got that jam box going hard.
There's another question I want to get from James. He does a lot of comments. It says the Dogs haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2019 and a 1,000-yard receiver since 2002. Which happens next, Coach?
I just don't know if that's our MO here. We play so many people. I ask them all the time. It looks like a revolving door, running backs and receivers in the game. So I don't know that that's going to change. That doesn't mean we don't have the players. We just play an inordinate amount of people in the backfield and at receiver. I mean, more than I ever played.
I don't see any reason why Cash Jones can't do both this year.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Cash will do whatever's necessary, and Cash will get drafted.
I will say I think Nate Frazier gets close. I think of the two scenarios, I think you're much more likely to see Nate Frazier if he stays healthy, get close to 1,000 yards. I just don't see, and Georgia's got a great wide receiver room. I mean, Noah Thompson,
potentially they do. They got to do it though.
They got a lot of potential. You got to get past the drops. You got to hit him in the numbers. Got to be able to block long enough for Gunner to get it to him. They have the potential. I think we've seen proven potential in Nate Frazier, and if they can run the ball.
Yeah, the one thing I would say to that guy, that was a really good, well thought out question. But among those lack of records since 2002 and since 2019, we haven't lost a home game since 2018. So we're doing something right.
Yeah, and that's James. Just curious. He's a good dude.
I think it's a great question. I wasn't taken away from his question saying that. I'm talking about the system.
Yeah, I think that's why he was asking. Was like it's just
System's not set up, James, for a guy to do that. Although I think maybe Frazier could.
It's also not really set up for the. I'll put it to you this way: when you get guys win Butkus Awards and you get Stetson Bennett invited to New York for the Heisman, and all these guys are in for these big awards, Georgia doesn't lobby for these things. And I see other schools; they'll have Coach, you've seen the Heisman campaigns and the ads in Madison in the middle of Times Square. Georgia doesn't really push for the individual accolades, and I know that we say it would help with recruiting, but they're not really hurting with recruiting. They're doing pretty
I'll ask you guys a question here that Bruce Feldman from Fox reached out to me. He said he's doing a piece on the top 25 players in the last 25 years in college football. Who were the top? Who would you say is a number one player and or among those 25? And I said Stetson Bennett. I mean, seriously, 2 national championships. And he said he agreed on one hand, but he said he also had a great supporting cast. So it's going to be interesting to see who would you say is the number one player in college football the last 25 years?
I'm guessing he's going to put Tebow.
I'm going to go Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I could go Brock Bowers too, but
well,
it's going to be interesting to see that what happens with it. But
Reggie Bush is up there.
Yeah,
my problem is when I start thinking of guys, I don't know if they played in the last 25 or it was older than that.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson would be up there. I thought Deshaun should have had 2 Heismans.
I'm not talking about massage parlors.
I'm talking college Deshaun. I'm not talking anything past that.
All right.
How many games did Trevor Lawrence win?
Did who?
How many games did Trevor Lawrence win?
Oh,
he won the championship, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm just saying. So somebody asked the other day about, Colorado did the whole thing about retiring jerseys. Someone asked me when's Georgia going to retire Brock Bowers' jersey? And my first thought was, what about Stetson Bennett's? But Brock Bowers has the better claim, 3-time All-American and 2 national titles. So
yeah, that's the thing about it. Brock could easily make the Hall of Fame, but you got to make All-American, I think, to win to get in the College Football Hall of Fame. So I think they need to have an addendum for Stetson, though.
It's an interesting discussion that Bruce brought to you, though, because you can look at it multiple ways. Cam Newton's 1 year was as good as anything you'll see. kind of the same with Joe Burrow, but it
And-
wasn't sustained beyond that.
And Baker Mayfield, I mean, good Lord.
Yeah. But then, how do you compare what a quarterback does to what Ndamukong Suh did? Because that was as strong as we've seen from that position in the last 25
Yeah, you could go. I mean, it's going to be a good thing.
Go to the Honey Badger. But if you want to say, well, you disqualify somebody for a good surrounding cast, then Joe Burrow. It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah, they have eight guys drafted off the offense. That's all.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, we will leave that discussion until a later day. Maybe this time next week we'll be talking about.
So, me as a Rivals listener here, how do I find out where this kid's going today?
He is actually going to announce on YouTube. His school is putting it out there. So if you are on this channel, we will probably go live about the same time he does, and we'll have it in one of the windows like we have
What
here.
time's that?
He announces at 3:45. So,
All right, I'll be waiting.
everybody tune into the Jackson Cantwell announcement later this afternoon, and we will see you all next week. Take care.